There we go. We are recording.
Gives me the option to leave meeting, I guess, in case they don't want me, I don't want to be recorded.
Oh, is that what I was asking you guys?
Yeah, it said, do you want to leave or are you okay being recorded?
Nice. Hey, I'll take that over Facebook saying that they're cutting us short because they have to protect the community from spam. Right.
I'm ready whenever you are.
So, all right. So thanks for joining us. For those who are on, I'm Michelle, and we have Jordan Gerard with LHM Financial, who's going to talk about the VA loan process. We have Lindsay Ryan, who is another agent who's going to talk about her area. Just kind of go over the VA buying process, how the loans work, how to get offers accepted. So we'll answer any questions at the end. You can put them in the chat box. So I'll go ahead and let Jordan get it started.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. And I think it's great that you're recording it because I'll try to put it in a little bit of a format where you could, share it and send it out. One of the biggest things that I always focus on when I talk about VA loans is a lot of the myths. I mean, we can sit here all day long. As she said, my name is Jordan. I'm with LHM Financial, and I've been doing this for 18 years. And I specialize in VA loans. I probably do more in Louisiana than anybody else. And there's always something new every single day with a client. So there can be a million questions about the mortgage process, but I really like to focus on the things that are a little bit different about the VA loan process and the VA mortgage process. We could talk about guidelines all day long about credit and employment and all these things, but I love to focus on what I find make VA loans very unique and talk about the myths that are there. The first one that I like to talk about is always the eligibility. Michelle told me that some of the questions she got in advance where people are just confused about what they're actually eligible for. Some of the big things that we see is people think, this is probably the biggest one. People think they can only use the VA loan once. I get tons of VA clients that tell me, oh, I want to save my VA loan for my dream home. You don't have to. You can use the VA loan multiple times. Believe it or not, you can even have multiple VA loans at the same time. Your eligibility is going to be a certain number. Let's say right now with the max loan amount, you're eligible for $650K worth of VA loans. If your first house was $125,000 and you want to turn that into a rental home and go buy an upgraded house at $300,000, you technically have enough eligibility to do both at 100% financing. And we can go into details more about how much eligibility you have, what's the max eligibility, but there's no max loan amount on your first house. If you're a VA buyer looking to buy a home, there's no longer any max loan amount, right? If you want to go buy a $3 million home with the VA loan, you can. You only have a max eligibility when you currently have another house. So that's when owning two homes comes into play, right? Like I have a rental house that I did a VA loan on and I'm trying to buy again. Well, then we got to look at your eligibility. So don't think you can only use a VA loan once. We have a lot of our sellers, our buyers that are actually selling. And as soon as they sell, they buy that afternoon. We call the VA, we restore their eligibility instantly, and they have 100% eligibility by the time they buy their next home the same day. So you can literally restore it that fast. Buy, sell, close the same day, and still have your full eligibility. So that's number one I like to talk about. The second I like to talk about, and I'm glad Michelle brought it up, was getting a VA offer accepted in this environment because there's so many misconceptions about a VA buyer and what that means. They think it's going to be more expensive for the seller. It's not. There's no extra fees that the seller of your house has to ever pay now because you're a VA offer. So if the listing agent says, we're not taking it, my seller doesn't want to pay extra, that's a lie, okay? There's no extra fees. The second thing is, what they don't understand is, and this is the biggest misconception, is people think a conventional buyer is more qualified. If I get a VA loan and I get a conventional offer side by side, if the listing agent is going to go to her sellers and say, hey, take conventional, they're more qualified and likely to close. Not true. The most qualified buyer technically on paper and least likely to be denied is VA. Let me tell you why. The average credit score on VA loans is 722. The average credit score on conventionals is like 738. You would think that would make conventional slightly more qualified. The problem is the guidelines on credit for VA are so less strict. We never deny VA loans. So the chances of actually having a VA loan denied are actually way less than having a conventional loan denied. The lowest default rate on any type of loan is VA. conventional loans actually default at a higher percentage than VA. There's a couple of reasons why. Obviously, people in the military tend to be a little bit more disciplined. They tend to have a little bit more secure income. So they are actually the least defaulted. From a lending perspective, if this loan defaults at the lowest rate, what does that mean? I'm most likely to approve, okay? So that's kind of one of the things I tell people up front is VA buyers are the most qualified. Now, how do we get sellers to believe this? And one of the things that I try to do is if you have a VA pre-approval with me, is I try to reach out to the listing agent and educate them up front about your qualifications. Hey, don't turn this offer down because it's VA. This is a strong, good buyer who's very qualified. And hell, all things equal, we should be trying to put veterans into homes. There's an obligation, I think, to these veterans to help them out. And the reason you even have your job as a real estate agent is because they fought for our freedom, but we're not going to talk about that. So that being said, I'm a huge fan of them. There's great benefits. No PMI, which with no money down right there, that's huge. If you're a disabled veteran, no funding fee. I mean, that's huge. Tons and tons of benefits. The last misconception I want to talk about is that they take longer to close. If you need a 10-day close, 15-day close, it can happen. The only real myth, which we're going to save for last about VA that's a little bit true, is that VA appraisals are tougher because they try to protect the veteran. Do they take longer? Are they more expensive? No. Does the value come out any different? That's the one I hear all the time. Oh, the house came in short because of the VA appraisal. No, man. All comps are the same. A home is not worth any more because it's a conventional loan or a VA loan or an FHA loan. The comparables are always the same. What would be different is the standards that the house needs to meet because they do want our veterans buying quality construction and quality homes. So there are going to be some standards, maybe like peeling paint, a couple little things there condition-wise that a VA appraiser may want fixed that a conventional appraiser may not want fixed. That's the only real objection you can ever have from a seller is, hey, my house is in bad shape, so I can't sell it to you. In that situation, they probably have a legitimate reason not to sell to a veteran because the VA appraisal is probably going to tear them apart. But that's the only real myth that we ever see that's a legitimate concern. Outside of that, VA loans have great rates, usually some of the best, better than conventional or FHA for sure. They have no down payment, no PMI. We can close them just as fast. And I'll damn sure promise you they're not going to get denied if we pre-approve them. So from that standpoint, we think they're fantastic. We would love to help anybody who has questions about the VA loan process, from your agent to your selling agent to any of your friends, whoever we can educate. That's been one of my missions forever, because there's so many misconceptions. And I hate to say this because I know Michelle's an agent, Lindsay's an agent. The majority of the education needs to be done to other agents because that's who's hurting our veterans. Whenever the offers come in, they're telling their sellers not to take them for silly reasons like, oh, it's not going to appraise with VA. Well, yes, it's going to appraise the exact same. Or they won't close on time or it cost you extra. That's the people who are spreading the misinformation. So, finding the right agent is so important when it comes to the VA loan process. And the more we can do to educate our buyers, our veterans, and the agents, I think it's a win for everybody. So that's my high horse. I'm off of it now. So if you guys have any questions, y'all can just let me know.
Thanks. Do you want to talk to them? I've gotten the question a lot too about locking in the rate. How far out can you lock in your rate?
Yeah, man. So rate locks are tricky, especially right now. Gosh, I've been doing this for 18 years and I've only been back doing loans for the last 2. I worked my way up. I was the CEO of a large national company. So I'm not telling you that to toot my horn by any means, because none of that's impressive at all. I was horrible at it. Just to be honest, no, not that bad. But I know more than a typical loan officer on the streets. And the one thing I know is right now, I have no idea what the market's going to do. Every time I'm being told, oh, the rates are going up, they go down. With COVID and all the different outside factors. So I hate to give people advice on rate locks. I hate to give people advice on anything to do with the markets. I don't know if it's going up. I don't know if it's going down. What I always try to tell them is, look, if you find a house, that's when you can lock your rate. A rate lock is not based on the client. People think we're locking the rate for you. We're not. We're actually locking the rate to that property address. So I cannot lock a rate until you have a house, okay? Because basically what's happening is I'm actually paying a fee to lock in that rate with my investor. So I'm hedging the money at that point. So if you don't have a house and you're still shopping and I'm hedging the money for your pre-approval, there's no way I can afford to do that, right? Because you may take 9 months and I paid fees and you never bought a house. So we have to have a contract in hand and we lock the rate to that property. So what I would tell people is, once you find the house you want to buy, if you're happy with the rate, just lock it in now. If you're closing anytime in the next 30 or 60 days, which most contracts are, lock the rate as soon as you go into contract, because more than likely, you're not going to win. Yes, there's a chance the rate can go down, but there's a way better chance the rate can go up. And what you don't want is to be under contract and end up paying $300 more for a house that you could have locked in at that time. So I try to treat rate locks a situational basis. It gets real confusing when people are buying new construction and it's 9 months out. It's so hard to give people advice in those situations. But if you're a normal buyer purchasing existing construction, once you go on the contract, find out what your rate is. If you like it, don't gamble, right? Lock it in, call it a day. Anytime you're closing in less than 60 days, happy with the rate, lock it in.
Right. I like that.
And look, if you have a good loan officer and the rates drop, we allow a float down, okay? So if I lock you in at 4.25 and COVID hits again and the rates go to 2.25, I'm not going to keep you at 4.25. We require at least a 0.25 reduction in rate to float you down, because we all know if I put you under contract at 4.25, COVID hits and the rates go to 2.25 and I can't match that, you're going to go to another lender who can, right? So anytime there's a drastic reduction in rate, your lender will be able to float you down. You just can't relock every time the rates move 0.01. If there's a huge drop, you have that option. So lock it in, be happy, and call it a day.
Yes. And to touch on what you were talking about too, the lender that you choose, especially in this market right now, matters. And I see it all the time with my VA buyers. I see it on social media when they're talking. It always comes up because, a lot don't know any better, but it's, USAA, Veterans United, Navy Federal. Those are the go-tos because that's what we know. And no, I've used them myself.
Hateful on Saturday, and I didn't even start off with that today, but I said it on Saturday.
And it's so true. It's so true, though. It
really makes me so mad because I said, they call me Captain Save Your Loan. That's what they always say. Save everybody's loans. I have a little cartoon guy where I rescue people like I'm a lifeguard, and 90% of them are Veterans United or USAA, and I get so mad because USAA's marketing is so good. I can't hate them. The company I was CEO of was in San Antonio. I drove by their palace, once a month. I mean, they're a great company, great marketing, but they have nothing to do with the military. Zero, nothing, except that they have learned how to get business by marketing them. USAA stands for United States Automobile Association. Okay, that's what it stands for. Do they have great car insurance? Yeah, it's really good because that's what they are. They're an automobile car insurance company that doubled down their business and they got into other lines marketed through the military, and they pretty much suck at all the rest. I hate to say it, but their home insurance sucks. Their mortgage department sucks. A lot of their departments just suck. And they cost veterans more than they help them because they get into every lane that they're not specialists at. Their mortgage guys are literally headphone jockeys in a call center that were delivering Papa John's last month. And that's just not fair to our veterans. And what happens is, because of the reputation they've built, when you get a USA pre-approval and you walk into a multiple offer situation where somebody else has an offer with a pre-approval from a guy like me, and you have a piece of paper from a headset jockey that used to deliver pizzas, unfortunately, you're going to lose the house because you went with them. And it's unfortunate, but I see it every day in this market. And it's because I'm having to save their deals. There's only so many times a listing agent's going to see that pre-approval letter and not trust it. And Quicken, USAA, and all these big corporate companies have a reputation for underpaying their loan officers. So what happens? Any loan officer who knows what they're doing is not going to stay work at USAA. They're going to get started at USAA, realize they can make 5 times as much money independently, and they leave. So what you end up with is all brand new guys in a call center who don't know what they're doing. It's not really USAA's fault. It's just the way the business works. No experienced loan officer who knows what they're doing is going to work at USAA. They're not. So you're going to get a brand new guy who's trying to sort through all these guidelines, and it puts you at risk as a buyer.
Yeah. And buyers, it matters right now. I'm sure it's the same in your market, Lindsay, that listing agents are calling and saying, who is your buyer using for a lender? Because it matters. So when you have, 5, 10 different offers on a property, you're going to want to know that. I do it for my listings. I want to know who that buyer is using if it's going to close. So it definitely matters right now of who your lender is. So I'll go ahead. I know that you have to jump off soon, Lindsay. So I'll go ahead and let you talk, and then I'll go over my stuff.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I've got to run out to another appointment. It's this market crazy, but just to touch on what Jordan had to say too, with having a local lender that really knows the quirks about your market, that's huge as well. And by having a familiar face stamped on your pre-approval letter, that's a huge shoe or foot in the door as well with a lot of listing agents. But if I can preach anything, it's the fact that BAH, especially if you're active duty, collecting that BAH, it is tax-free money that the government is paying you. So it's not increasing your tax liability for your income taxes, but you have that opportunity to either pay 100% interest rates towards base housing or paying some other landlord's mortgage, or you can invest it in your own home to watch that money grow and cash out whenever you decide the right time is to sell. We found that super lucrative down here in the Keys. So little shameless plug, I serve everywhere throughout the Keys, from Key Largo all the way down to Key West. We have a whole slew of various military installations down here with every single branch as well. But the average 4-year BAH total is roughly $150,000 down here. So you can choose to throw that money away to renting, with the prospect of increasing rental rates every single year. As soon as that annual lease expires, the landlord has their the option or at their discretion, they can increase your rental rate. So this allows you to lock in your expected monthly payment by purchasing, and then you're also investing in your own livelihood, it's kind of like a forced savings account, by investing that BAH. So it's pretty neat. Down here in the Keys, we actually have a 6 to 8% appreciation in the lower Keys and 11 to 13% in Key West itself. So that's pretty fantastic. And that's pre-COVID too. That's the average before COVID. So certainly something to consider, but being able to throw your hat in the ringer with a seasoned VA realtor, that's your shoe in the door, your foot in the door. Sorry, I say that all the time, but you really need somebody that understands, like Jordan was saying, the ins and outs of writing a VA loan. Like for instance, I think if I remember correctly, in Louisiana, you have a WDO inspection, which is wood destroying organisms. But in the Keys, we basically refer to that as a termite inspection because they're just they're prevalent in the Keys. That is something that, your realtor should be able to get squared away for you. And frankly, you should be able to see most of that while you're even touring your home to decide if it's the right house to buy. So having somebody that knows what to look out for is definitely huge. And like Jordan touched on as well, knowing what sort of other features for VA buyers, to look out for: the roof condition, if there's wood rot, and termite evidence, basically the safety hazards and, quality or condition that the VA appraisers are looking out for. Another neat tidbit about VA loans is the fact that VA loans, I believe, you can correct me, but I believe this is correct, that the VA loans are the only loan option that actually allow the buyers to kind of expedite things up the chain of command, where you have two options. It's the Tidewater Initiative, where the VA appraiser will let the lender and the buyer know that the value has come in or potentially come in short. And then we have the option to submit comps to help support the agreed upon terms of the contract. If that falls dead in the water, we actually can take that even further to the VA appraisal department, which again, they actually hire legitimate appraisers to work in their department, so they know how to crunch those numbers. So every now and again, we have an appraisal that comes in short, especially with the market going gangbusters. We have to kind of get a little bit creative behind the scenes and see what we can do to piece things back together and keep the seller happy, to please not have to put the house back on the market.
Oh, you're right. I won't correct you because you're correct.
Okay, awesome. That's I was second guessing myself.
No, the Tidewater part, you get They do that on every time it's going to come in short. They do that. They notify us, and we have the opportunity, on every time. So that's a right there. I tell people all the time, like, a VA appraisal is actually better because it's the only one they're going to notify you in advance. It's coming in short. The rest, you open your email and you're like, bam, so it's a huge advantage. But the second part, I would tell you, while that is the case, we've never actually done one because the time constraints are usually tough. But if you have an all-out fight, you can escalate to the VA and they can grant you more value. I've never personally done it. They've been able to sell it on their own, but it is an option. You're correct.
Sorry, I am walking. I've got to hit the road to
That's
get out.
okay. I'll pick up or you're leaving off and finish on that.
Yes, but just give us a call. We have a whole team. There's myself and two other realtors down in the Keys, Katie Fucci and Louise Steinke. We are the VA experts in all of the Keys. So you're in good hands with us. But thank you guys for having me. Sorry to have to go, but it's time to probably write another contract.
No, do you
go, Lindsay, go.
Right.
Drive safe. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
So touching on what Lindsay was saying is, just like I said, how important it is, the lender that you choose, the realtor that you choose is very important too. Making sure that you have an agent who knows what to do when it goes into Tidewater. I've had a few that we've had to do that, know how to run comps. Another big thing, especially right now with how crazy the market is having an agent who understands the VA loan, who will call and talk to the listing agent. I always call, I pick up the phone. Hey, my client really liked your home. We're probably going to write an offer. I start to get a feel for other things. Obviously, money is number one, but other things that the seller may be looking for. It may be a certain time frame, just different things that besides the money where we can kind of tweak our offer to, get it above in the multiple offer situations to make it stand out. So that's a big one, to really make sure that your agent knows what's going on. And there's a lot of agents out there, like we were saying, who don't understand the VA loan process. So like Jordan was saying, they're scaring their seller from accepting our offers. So make sure that your agent is talking to the listing agent and explaining on your behalf what you're looking for, how the VA works. I hear it all the time, and I think it's silly. It's kind of like the thing of a conventional loan over a VA loan, that the conventional is better. I've literally heard them say, well, it's a VA loan. They have no skin in the game. What do you mean they have no skin in the game? What does it matter to you what they're putting down or not putting down? Has no effect on your bottom line at the closing table when the seller's getting paid. So I say to some of my buyers, if that's kind of the stance they're taking, well, one, we do have skin in the game because you're probably PCSing and you need a home or you're going to be homeless. So I'd say that's skin in the game. And two, if you can maybe up your earnest money, either you get it back at closing or it goes towards your closing costs. But that's just one of those things that your agent can tweak on your offer to just make it a little bit more appealing to the seller, if that's how they're feeling. It's like, oh, okay, instead of putting $1,000 earnest money, they're coming to the table with $5,000. Just things like that is really important, especially in the market right now. So, and with the market, don't be scared. Everybody's hearing it's a seller's market. Not going to sugarcoat it. It is, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad time to buy, because interest rates are still at an all-time low, correct?
I think we got spoiled by the last year of COVID, but if you take out the last 2 years, it would still be a good time to buy relatively, yes. I mean, before we had the record low 3s and 2s, getting a rate at 3.5 on a VA, 3.7 at a VA would have been great. But, the last year had us down to 2s. So you take out the COVID years, and yes, they would be at the very bottom.
Yes. So, so it's still a good time to buy. And I always just tell when you are buying, remember, unless it is going to be your forever home and you're at the retirement phase of your career or you're using your VA, most likely you're not going to be there forever. It's not your forever home. So go into the purchase doing it smart. Make it an investment. If you are dead set on a 4-bedroom right now, maybe go to a 3-bedroom. Don't look at the top of your budget. Kind of go down. That way you have wiggle room to offer more and go up. So those kinds of things to think about talk with your agent, and it will really help you not to get discouraged in this market right now, because I'm seeing buyers are getting discouraged, and it's just little things like that that will help you get the home that you need. So does anybody have any questions? I think we just have Bobby and
I have questions.
yes, and ask them away.
Okay, so the earnest money that you give, you said that it either goes towards the cost of the home or you could use it towards the closing costs. Is that correct?
It goes towards your closing costs. So the earnest money is held as soon as you go under contract. It's held either, it depends. Mississippi, the buyer's agent holds it. Here in Louisiana, it's the listing agent. So anyways, it's held in escrow. And at the end, and it gets cashed. At the end, when you're at the closing table, either it goes towards your closing costs, not the purchase price of the home, but the closing costs, or if the seller is covering any of the closing costs, you get the money back.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
You can get it back.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So that's what I think is funny when people say you have no skin in the game. At the end of the day, the down payment somebody's putting is never skin in the game until you close, right? The earnest money is the only skin in the game. If I tell you I'm going to put 10,000 earnest money as a deposit and the seller's paying all the closing costs, I'm still getting the 10,000 back at closing. The same for conventional. So, having the larger the down payment ain't skin in the game. The only part that's actually skin in the game for the seller would be the size of the deposit. And, you can get it back if you put a larger one. So yeah. I'm with you on that, Michelle. Like, somebody telling me they don't have skin in the game because they're not putting a down payment is so silly. I mean, yes. If I'm a conventional buyer and I'm putting 300 down, I'm not putting it till we close. So the seller doesn't have any extra security because I'm giving my bank 300K. You're not getting it to hold.
Exactly. And Bobby, the earnest money is held because that is locking you into the contract. In Louisiana and Mississippi, you have 2 times you can get out. You can get out so you pay it, you do your inspection period, which is your time to get all your inspections in, do everything that you need to do. And if you decide, hey, this isn't the house for me, a house has termites everywhere or whatever, you get your earnest money back. If during the appraisal process, it doesn't come back and it doesn't appraise and we can't work it out and the seller won't drop the price, so contract's done, you get your money back. So it's kind of just, and then it's there as security for the seller that you're not just going to all of a sudden, in the middle of the contract, be like, oh, never mind, I don't want it. And they've held the house off the market. They get to keep the money.
Correct.
So
yeah.
So.
The other question I had with that for VA loans is the closing costs. Are closing costs able to roll into your loan, or is that due in full at closing?
That's a good question. That's a super tricky question because a lot of people think rolling into a loan is subjective to where I can do it on my side. So there's actually no loan whatsoever where I can roll closing costs into the loan. The only way closing costs can be included is if you structure your offer that way with your agent. So for example, if the house is $100,000 for sale and closing cost is $5,000, I can't just say, hey, Bobby, you're buying the house for 100. I'm going to loan you 105 and wrap the closing costs in. I can't do that on my side. But you can call Michelle and say, hey, Michelle, I want to offer 105 and ask the seller to pay $5,000 in closing costs because I don't want to come out with pocket with anything. Technically, you get from point A to point B the same way, but it has to be done through the agent with the agreement of the seller because the house is then going to have to appraise for the 105. I can't take a sales contract of 100,000 and just change it to 105 to wrap closing costs on my side. It has to go through the agents. The end result is the same, but you have to get the seller to agree to it, and it has to go through the agents. I wish I could just arbitrarily at the end of loans wrap closing costs in. That would literally make my job so easy for most of my first-time home buyers because in this market, they're asking for closing costs and they're getting beat by people who aren't asking for them. If I could just do it on my own and charge them for it, that would be ideal. That would change my life, actually.
Well, the VA funding fee is the only part because it's considered closing costs. The VA
funding fee is automatically charged back and it's automatically rolled in. That's correct because that's considered above and it's a finance item. They do not charge you out of pocket for that. And the sellers never really even know about that. You can't actually get that paid, or you can actually. You can.
And then the other thing,
you don't want to ask for all that.
So what I do, especially in this market the way that it is, it's hard to get them to agree to that. And if it's a good listing agent, they're telling them, okay, but so it's not money for money. So like Jordan was saying, say you offered over 5,000 to get 5,000 in closing. Seems money for money, but on the listing side, it's not, because they're paying commission off that. So what I do, if that's something that one of my buyers needs, I'll tell the listing agent, hey, the commission will only be off the 100,000, like off the purchase, so that way the listing or the seller is not paying extra commission on that 5,000 you're asking for. So it's all things like that to get creative, to make sure your agent can do, like, knows to do things like that. It just a little thing that I try to do, and I've had then sellers go, okay, that's fine, we'll do that. It's not always something I offer right away, but if they're starting to kind of not want to give the closing cost, then it's just one more trick to say, well, what if I do it, this way? So
Okay, that makes sense.
I think certain markets that you're in are going to be, if you're around a military base, for example, and you're buying a house whenever you get transferred in, the majority of agents around there should, praise the Lord, should know about VA loans. I had a real hard time when I was living in Houston, and while Harris County, where I lived, had the largest population in the country of veterans, there's 182,000 veterans. Most of the agents there don't have military background. There's no bases around there. So the people who were using their VA loans weren't transferring in. They weren't common things the agents were seeing. So sadly, they didn't understand them. If you're transferring around a base, hopefully the other agents understand what's going on. They don't push back, because when the selling agent is uneducated about the VA loan is when we see problems. If they understand that it's typical, because you're transferring from base to base, you're buying around the base, well, hopefully those agents understand by now. It's these old school agents who live in areas where they don't typically see them that have these misconceptions. And that's the hard part to educate is, how do we find these people and educate them? It's kind of tough.
And for those who are afraid of having to come up with closing costs, because right now I tell my buyers, look, straight up, if you can pay the closing costs and don't even have to ask for it, that's ideal. Especially with all the multiple offers. It's obviously the best deal. 2 years ago, it was, oh, we're gonna offer under ask. We want a new fence and we want closing costs, and we were getting it. Now it's just
the market changes fast, right? So, the market changes fast.
So I always say, but think about it. Okay, you're coming here and you're about to, because it seems like, oh, I'm gonna have to have all that money. One, you don't pay it till closing. Two, you're gonna have to come up with money if you rent when you have first, last deposit, all this kind of stuff. That's a big chunk of money. That could be $8,000, $9,000 right there. There's no difference between that and paying your closing costs. So it's just certain words that trigger people, and they go, oh no, I won't have that. Think about the other ones.
There are certain words that trigger people. It's crazy.
Yep. So
I do have another question.
Yes.
Because of the way the market is right now, we're seeing a lot of houses that people have to offer above the asking price. And so there's that gap between the appraisal and the price then. And what are your suggestions about that?
That's another misconception about VA loans.
Okay.
We hear all the time, you can pay it. I'll let Michelle give advice as far as like structuring your offer, but from a loan standpoint, people think you can't pay more on a VA loan. They're like, oh, we only take conventional because they can pay over appraisal price. You can on VA too.
Yeah.
How does that work then if they go in and they appraise it for less?
So
you just contact your lender and
the lender will contact you because he's gonna be when he gets the appraisal, he's gonna be like, we got a problem.
Okay. And then it's up to you then if you want to pay that difference. For you, if it's going to be your forever home, I would say sure, because over the time, obviously you're going to get that back.
Right.
My buyers who are coming in and only going to be here for 3 or 4 years, I personally am kind of like, I wouldn't do that. My sister just bought in Washington State and they paid $10,000 over the appraised value. So it's just some areas that's what taken.
The value of a house, Michelle, is worth what you're willing to pay for it, right?
Yep.
So if you're not willing to pay the price you offer on the contract, I would suggest not going on the contract. If you only want to pay what the appraisal value is, you're in a tough spot. Like, don't offer that amount. I get it, but appraisals are subjective. I've seen two different appraisers come up with two different prices. I mean, if a house is worth 300K, one guy appraising it for 290 shouldn't change your mind what it's worth. Now, it's your decision whether you want to come up with that 10K, and some people just can't. But if you agree that you are willing to pay over appraisal, then to me, the appraisal is pointless, right? Like, that house is worth 300K to you. You know, that's your decision you make, and you should roll forward. I think where the agents get confused is they think a VA buyer cannot pay the difference if they want to. They think it's not allowed. It is definitely allowed. Now, it's your personal choice whether you want to bring that cash to the table. And like Michelle said, it becomes her responsibility at that point to educate you like, hey, you told me you only want to live here for 2 years. You're going to be transferring again. Paying 20K more, Bobby, is, I don't know you're going to get your 20K out in 2 years, you know?
Right.
So that's where we draw the line. We let the real estate agent give the advice on the value and so forth. We just set it up like, hey, the house appraised for 280. You purchasing it for 300, we're going to need that 20K cash because your VA loan is only going to cover 100% of the appraisal price. So that gap becomes your responsibility for you and your agent to decide if it's worth it to you. And with their advice, you can make that decision.
Okay, so with a VA loan, then if it appraises for 280, they're not going to give you 300. They're going to say
there's not a loan out there that's going to conventional FHA. Any of them is not going to loan you over appraisal price on the sales contract at all.
Okay.
And I think that's why they said, you know, and a lot of places they're making you sign a waiver up front. Like in Houston, my Houston market, they're waiving the appraisal contingency, meaning if it appraises short, like you're agreeing before it even comes in to pay over. Like that's how they're winning these offers. So it's not like you get to decide when the appraisal comes in if you want to. You know, you're actually waiving it up front. So they may even require that. But I don't know if I would go that route. But to me, you know, that's a tricky situation. Each market's going to be different. And if you know, people get desperate. You lose out on 5 or 6 offers. People start doing crazy things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And my suggestion to all my buyers right now is be ready, have your game plan, especially if you're doing it from out of state. If you have an agent somewhere else that's going and taking videos for you, be ready. I don't want my buyers to ever feel pressured or, you know, make a quick decision. But right now, if you find a home and you're like, I'll sleep on it, I guarantee it'll be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to hurry. So I just have been telling everybody, have a game plan, know what we're going to ask for, know what our budget is, know if you have the closing costs, and be ready to say, yep, that's the one, write the offer, go.
I'll sleep on it means I don't want this one, Michelle. Now, it used to be out the side. That means pretty much like we're not getting this house. The truth, unfortunately.
And another question, Jordan, the $5,500 fee for the VA loan. So my husband was
what is that from?
That's the VA funding fee. I think you mean it's 2.6% of the loan the first time, 3.6% after that.
Okay.
The funding fee, yes.
Yes.
It'll be based on the loan amount. Michelle's right, it's a percentage. So the bigger the house, the larger the fee.
Right. So my husband was given 90% disability from the service. So we heard that there's a discount.
There's no funding fee.
No funding fee, it's gone.
Oh, really?
Yes, you can use it as many times as you want. There will never be a funding fee ever. Probably one of the biggest benefits, you know, in Texas, if you're 90% doesn't get it in Texas, but in Texas, if you're 100% disabled, they actually waive all your property taxes too. So like I'll have a veteran in my Houston office that will buy a 500K house. The taxes are on 500K in Texas and only $700 a month. They'll waive the $700 a month in taxes and they won't pay the 15K funding fee. And I hear all the time they don't take care of veterans. I always tell people, well, in Texas, in the mortgage industry, they take care of veterans. The VA hospitals might not be great, but from the mortgage standpoint, if you're a disabled veteran in Texas, man, they take care of you from a housing standpoint. They waive your property taxes completely. They waive your funding fee completely. I mean, that's a crazy benefit in my mind. I'll literally have, I mean, that's $700 a month savings on a 500K house for a veteran if you're disabled in Texas. That's amazing. So every market's a little bit different what they do on the taxes, but the funding fees across the board, you'll never pay it. Whether you refi, you do a cash out refi, you buy a second home, there's no differences. You're always paying zero.
Cool.
I'll check for you, Bobby, and see if Iowa has that, because I know some states also, it doesn't have to be 100%. It's different percentages where they waive the no property
They'll give
taxes.
you a discount in Texas based on how disabled you are, but they'll only waive it if you're 100%. So you may get a discount on property taxes. That's a good point as well. So in Iowa, that would be great. The next thing I would tell you is, for anybody else listening and you play it back, that's not just for 90% disabled. Technically, the rule is if you're at least 10 or 15% disabled, which from everything I've seen, I've never, ever, ever come across a veteran who was considered disabled that their percentage was too low. I think if they consider you disabled, you have to be at least 10 or 15% disabled. I don't think they do like 3 or 4% disabled. I think it's at least 10. So I think once you're considered disabled, the funding fee is waived, whether it be 1, 2, 3, 90, or 100%. They waive it for anyone with that rating of disabled.
I had a client who bought over in Mississippi, and I know it's lender to lender and it's not always the same, and they really got lucky, but they were trying to wait for his rating to come, and they found the house and it just didn't work. They're like, nope, this is the house. They jumped on it. He ended up getting his rating like 3 weeks after we closed, and the lender went back and gave them back the funding.
Everybody will do that. So that's actually required by the VA. There's a certain timeline where if you get your disability rating after a loan, the VA will actually refund the funding fee. The lender doesn't collect that fee, believe it or not. So we collect on behalf of the VA. It's paid directly to the VA. So, you know, the lender was just facilitating that transaction and did it correctly, whereas they could have easily got a lender on the phone that told them, no, we don't, you know, that doesn't work that way. So that's great that they facilitated that and did it the right way. Because the VA is technically the one that refunds it to the buyer. You do have a certain time period where that is allowed. That's great. I've never actually heard of that being done, but it is allowed. The VA has to refund the money though.
They're happy. She called me crying. She's like, you're never going to guess what. And I was like, did something happen to the house? She's like, no, I got my VA funding fee back. I'm like, oh, that's
pretty
good.
cool.
So I was really happy for them. Retired couple, and it all worked out.
That's awesome.
Any other questions?
My last one was, he had mentioned like locking in the rate as soon as you have, so as soon as, like, if we put in an offer and it gets accepted, then we should call the lender to lock in that rate then before.
The lender should be working hand in hand with your agent and should know as soon as you're under contract. They should be calling you. You have 3 days by law. Once you go under contract as a lender, I have 3 days by law at that point to disclose to you all the pertinent information, all your res docs, all your disclosures, right? So I don't wait the 3 days. I mean, I'm calling you right away. Hey, I got your docs ready. Here's what your rate is. I'm locking it in. If you're happy with it, I'm having that conversation day one when I get a contract. So they should be in touch with you. But if not, you should reach out to them, because you know what? Some agents and realtors don't have the best relationship with the lender. Maybe you're using a lender they don't know, right? So the agent may not have even sent the lender the contract. He may just be sitting in his office not knowing you're under contract. So yeah, shooting him a text. Hey, buddy, we're under contract. You know, my agent should have sent you the contract by now. He should reach right back out. Great. I'm going to start putting your numbers together and reach out to you about the rate ASAP. But yeah, within 2 days at tops, you should be having that conversation with your lender, because he only has 3 days by law to disclose everything to you.
Which all goes hand in hand with pick a good agent, pick a good lender. I always tell my buyers, you know, I do 3. I give them, no, Jordan, I give them 3 different lenders.
We'll talk about that later. No, just
I always say, I'm like, here's my top one. Here's why. I don't get any kickback, because someone starts to say, oh, well, what are you going to get? I don't get any kickback. I just know that they take good care of my clients, that we communicate together, and that they close the deal. And so those are all, you know, really important things when you're picking who your agent and who your lender is.
Yeah, I would always go with an agent that you trust, as far as, you know, on that side, and the same for a mortgage side. Like, the thing that I would discourage is to choose people who don't work together. And I hate to say that, because I've worked, some of the best agents I've gotten through buyers who picked an agent that I never knew, and then we worked together and then we stayed together, you know, because we met through a transaction. But man, having a lender and an agent who already know each other, who communicate and know the process, is pretty priceless. I'm not saying it won't work out, but the last thing you want to do is have one of your homeboy lenders, and another one of your real estate friends, and you marry those two together and they don't like each other. I mean, that could be disastrous. Like, you want to make sure, I would recommend choosing your agent and letting them tell you, or vice versa, choosing your mortgage guy and letting them refer you an agent they work with. You want a symbiotic relationship between those two, because if they don't get along, just by coincidence, it could be disastrous. Definitely listen to each one's recommendations and try to pair up, a group that works together. I think you'll see a huge benefit in that.
Cool.
Yep. Any other questions?
That's it for me. That's all I had written down.
I like your questions, Bobby Jean. That makes me feel useful.
Yes. All I can say is just be ready. The market is crazy, but it can be done. Don't be afraid.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Make sure that your agent is communicating with you. Make sure they're communicating with the other side. And that's how the deals are getting done right now.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I don't know if you're going to share this with anybody, but anybody wants to reach out to me. I know I talk a lot. I get passionate about this. Sorry, I get fired up. So it is what it is.
You're good. I'll share, and I will share your info in the link too.
All right. Thank you very much. Y'all have a great one.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for joining, Jordan.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Bye, guys. And if anybody else has any questions, feel free to reach out. I will respond to questions in the comments. You can message me. If there's anything that you wanted forwarded on to Jordan, I can do that for you. But again, just don't be afraid of buying right now. Don't be afraid of the market. Don't be afraid of using your VA loan. It's there. It's great. Don't feel like you're not going to get accepted because you're using the VA loan, that your offer won't get accepted. Like I said, just make sure that your agent knows the VA loan process and can communicate that with the listing agent. Don't be afraid and go out and buy and invest, and don't pay somebody else's mortgage. So thank you for joining us. And like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out.